There was this old pawnbroker in town that I met that helped me uh, figure out the bookwork and everything, and helped me out.
Rick Harrison built more than a pawn shop. He built a kingdom where deals told stories and each item carried history, memory, and value. 4 years. The bright lights of Las Vegas reflected off gold and silver. Behind the counter, Rick was king. But even kings face storms they cannot control. In 2025, the world watched quietly as Pawn Stars slipped from the air without fanfare or explanation. A show that once drew millions now vanished, leaving silence in its place. Fans asked questions, but there were no answers. The History Channel said nothing. Corey Harrison, his own son, stepped away, calling the family story a performance. Meanwhile, a lawsuit from Rick's mother accused him of betrayal, alleging he took millions while she was vulnerable and unconscious. The empire Rick fought so hard to build was cracking. Piece by piece, behind the familiar smiles, the camera never captured the quiet heartbreak, the weight of grief, the pressure to hold the family together, and the fear that all his efforts might collapse under scrutiny. The man who once negotiated with antiques, rare guitars, and classic cars now faced battles far more personal. Every deal he had made seemed to echo with what he had lost. Every familiar face at the shop carried a shadow of tension or distance. And yet, even in the face of this unraveling, Rick held onto a flicker of hope. He began talking about Pawn Stars 2.0, a new chapter, a chance to rebuild what had been lost. But this was no longer about fame or money alone. It was about survival of a legacy, survival of a family, survival of a man who had spent his life navigating both triumph and tragedy. The story starts here, not with sparkling gold or the thrill of a perfect deal, but with the quiet, human struggle behind the empire. A man confronting everything he had built and everything he had already lost. The weight of history was on his shoulders, and the world was watching, even if nobody knew exactly what would come next. Rick Harrison's story begins long before the pawn shop or the cameras. Born in 1965 in Lexington, North Carolina, he entered a world already weighed down by loss. His older sister had died at just 6 years old, leaving a quiet emptiness that lingered in the Harrison household. His father, a disciplined Navy man, enforced order with iron precision, while his mother tried to hold the family together, under pressure that no child could fully understand. When Rick was only 2, the Navy relocated the family to San Diego, uprooting them from familiar streets and friends. Packing and moving became a rhythm he could never escape, shaping him into a boy who learned early to adapt, to carry his own resilience like a shield dot at the age of 8. Life threw another challenge. The seizures began. Once a month, his body betrayed him, muscles tightening, limbs aching, leaving him confined to bed for days, while other children played outside. Rick faced darkness and silence, yet even in that isolation, something extraordinary happened. He discovered books one after another, worlds that opened doors he couldn't reach physically, but could explore with his mind. Reading became his sanctuary, his lifeline, and ultimately, his compass. Stories like the Great Brain taught him to see opportunity in difficulty, to think creatively when the world seemed against him, and to turn misfortune into a puzzle to solve rather than an obstacle to surrender to. Even as addiction and early rebellion crept in with adolescence, the lessons from those quiet hours remained. Rick began to understand that life would demand a different path. That choice is stacked like building blocks, each one shaping who he could become. In these formative years, Rick Harrison was learning something far more valuable than business or strategy. He was learning endurance, ingenuity, and the courage to survive in a world that often felt unfair. By the early 1980s, Rick Harrison had left childhood behind, carrying both the scars of loss and a restless drive to survive. Las Vegas became his proving ground, a city of bright lights, fleeting fortune, and endless opportunity. At just a teenager, Rick discovered the thrill of the hustle. He started selling goods at swap meets, turning small investments into surprising profits. Fake Gucci bags, then Jordache jeans. Each deal taught him a lesson about market shifts, competition, and resilience. Every setback became a challenge, every failure a pivot. And in the chaos of the marketplace, Rick began to see the rhythm of success. Amid these early triumphs, life pressed hard on his personal front. At 17, he became a father to Corey, and shortly after, Adam. The weight of responsibility fell heavy on his young shoulders. Teenage marriage, newborns, and the relentless pace of survival forced him to grow up faster than most could imagine. In the streets and swap meets of Las Vegas, he learned to negotiate not just with customers, but with life itself. He discovered how to balance ambition with accountability, creativity with caution. Las Vegas, in its raw, unpolished form, became a classroom. The city demanded ingenuity, patience, and courage, and Rick responded in kind. Nights spent repossessing cars, days negotiating deals, and weekends hustling in markets shaped the foundation of what would become an empire. The thrill of creating something from nothing, the spark of independence, and the satisfaction of seeing hard work pay off became a defining rhythm in his life here. Amid neon signs and relentless motion, Rick Harrison found not only a way to survive, but the first glimmers of a larger destiny, a legacy he would someday transform into a household name. Though the cost of this climb would shadow him for decades to come. By the mid-1980s, Rick Harrison's life had become a delicate balance between survival and ambition. The move to Las Vegas had been both a leap of faith and a necessity. His family arrived with barely $5,000 to their name, but Rick saw possibilities where others saw limits. Within weeks, the Harrisons opened the gold and silver coin shop, a tiny 300 square foot space that became a testing ground for Rick's instincts, negotiation skills, and relentless work ethic. Day after day, he manned the counter, learning the rhythm of customer interaction, the subtle art of reading people, and the delicate calculations of buying and selling. Nights were spent repossessing cars and hustling side ventures, every effort aimed at building stability for his young family. Rick's vision went beyond simple survival. He wanted a pawn shop that was more than a transactional space. He wanted a place where stories lived inside the items, where customers could feel both trust and curiosity. This dream drove him to push past setbacks like the long wait for a city-issued license. Las Vegas officials claimed that no new pawn shop licenses would be issued until the city population reached 150,000, a milestone predicted to take decades. But Rick didn't wait. He tracked the statistics weekly, patiently, counting down the days until opportunity arrived. In April 1989, when the threshold was finally met, he secured the license, opening the gold and silver pawn shop on Las Vegas Boulevard. This small victory marked the beginning of a legacy. From a modest shop, Rick built a place that would touch thousands of lives, create millions in revenue, eventually captivate the world on television. But behind the transactions and bright deals lay tireless labor, sleepless nights, and the quiet weight of responsibility. The pawn shop wasn't just a business, it was a promise to himself, to his sons, and to a family that had endured grief, upheaval, and struggle. Every coin, every rare guitar, every vintage collectible became a symbol of resilience, ingenuity, and the belief that even the smallest beginnings could grow into something extraordinary. Rick Harrison's gold and silver pawn shop was thriving, but even a successful shop couldn't guarantee immortality. He had a vision that reached beyond coins and antiques. He wanted the world to see the people, stories, and history behind every item. In the early 2000s, he began pitching the idea of a television show, a family story wrapped inside a real business. Initially, he faced rejection after rejection, each no a quiet test of perseverance. But Rick's persistence never wavered. He imagined a series that could showcase his family's grit, the thrill of negotiation, and the unusual treasures that crossed the counter. The breakthrough came when Left Field Pictures suggested a shorter, catchier title, Pawn Stars. In 2009, the show premiered on the History Channel, and it didn't just attract viewers, it captivated them. Millions tuned in to watch Rick negotiate, to see his sons Corey and Austin Chumley bring their own energy to the counter, and witness the delicate balance between family loyalty and business acumen. The shop itself transformed overnight. What had once drawn 100 customers per day now attracted thousands. Tourists lined up to glimpse the stories they had seen on screen, and Rick's quiet determination became the heartbeat of a cultural phenomenon. Yet, behind the cameras, life remained complicated. Grief, tension, and personal loss threaded through the family, hidden from the audience but shaping every interaction. The show's success masked the emotional labor Rick carried, daily the weight of expectations, the strain of public scrutiny, and the ongoing responsibility for both family and business. Each rare purchase, each legendary deal, became more than a transaction. It was a reflection of sacrifice, strategy, and the human stories that the cameras couldn't fully capture. Pawn Stars had turned Rick into a symbol of American enterprise, but the man himself remained grounded, weathering both fame and personal hardship with quiet resilience. Success on television brought wealth, fame, and opportunities, but it could not shield Rick Harrison from life's deepest pains. Behind the cameras, the quiet tragedies piled up. His father, Richard the Old Man Harrison, remained a guiding presence until 2017, when Parkinson's disease took him from the world. The grief was immense, felt not only by Rick, but by millions who had come to know the family through the screen. His mother, Joanne, passed in 2024, leaving unresolved tensions and legal battles in her wake. And then came the most devastating blow of all. His son Adam, only 39, was found dead in January 2024, a victim of fentanyl and methamphetamine toxicity. Rick's words after the loss struck hearts across the nation. There is no pain worse than losing a child, he admitted, a quiet honesty that resonated with parents everywhere. These personal tragedies did not stop the demands of business. Rick remained at the helm of the gold and silver pawn shop, navigating not only the daily operations, but also the pressures of public expectation. Every televised deal, every rare artifact purchased, became a balancing act between personal grief and professional performance. Even in moments of triumph like securing rare collectibles or achieving milestones in viewership, the shadow of loss lingered. Fame and fortune could not fill the void left by family members who had shaped his life. From childhood onward, yet through heartbreak, Rick continued to demonstrate resilience. He became a voice in the national conversation about the opioid crisis, speaking openly about the dangers of fentanyl and the devastation addiction can bring to families. The public saw a man who had climbed from modest beginnings, achieved extraordinary success, and yet faced the raw vulnerabilities of life with courage and honesty. His story reminded the world that human triumph is never without its costs, and that even the strongest empires are built on the fragile foundations of love, loss, and unyielding determination. Even the strongest legacies can be tested by scandal. For Rick Harrison and the Pawn Stars family, 2016 brought a storm that no camera could soften. Chumley, the friend and longtime employee who had become a beloved figure on the show, faced legal trouble after authorities discovered firearms, drugs, and paraphernalia in his home. The news sent shockwaves through the fanbase, and suddenly, the private struggles of those behind the counter became public. Chumley pled guilty to a felony weapons charge and a misdemeanor drug possession charge, resulting in probation and counseling. The network remained largely silent. Filming continued, but the air of tension was palpable. Behind the scenes, Rick bore the weight of responsibility. The legal issues were more than a disruption, they were a reminder of how fragile stability can be. Every decision mattered, every misstep carried consequences, and the human cost of fame became undeniable. The cameras could capture humor, history, and rare treasures, but they could not capture the emotional strain of watching a family member face real jeopardy, or the sleepless nights Rick spent worrying about the consequences for the people he considered family. These setbacks added layers to Rick's story. Triumphs on the show contrasted sharply with private struggles. The world saw a confident dealmaker, a man who seemed always in control, yet in his personal life, grief, conflict, and uncertainty lingered. The empire he built on trust, knowledge, and perseverance was strong, but it was not immune to the messy complexities of human life. Scandals reminded Rick and the world that fame amplifies challenges, and as public scrutiny intensified, he learned that resilience is not only about success, but about enduring adversity with dignity. Even when the cameras are off, and no one is watching. By the late 2010s, the weight of personal loss had grown heavy on Rick Harrison. The death of his father, Richard the Old Man Harrison, in 2018 marked the end of an era. Rick had spent decades learning from him, absorbing his wisdom, humor, and discipline. Losing him left a void that no amount of fame or wealth could fill. Yet the empire they had built together, the gold and silver pawn shop and the worldwide recognition of Pawn Stars, remain as both a tribute and a burden. Each day behind the counter, each rare deal, was now a reminder of those who were gone and the legacy Rick was entrusted to uphold. Then tragedy struck again with the death of his son Adam in 2024. Years of battling addiction had ended in heartache, leaving Rick grappling with grief on a scale few could comprehend. He spoke publicly about the dangers of fentanyl, transforming personal pain into a message that resonated across the nation. His words carried the weight of experience, warning others while exposing the intimate fragility of life behind the public persona. Fame could not shield him from sorrow, and yet Rick found a way to channel loss into purpose. Even as lawsuits, family disputes, and public scrutiny loomed, Rick continued to press forward. His determination to protect and grow the family legacy became his anchor. Each collectible, each deal, each interaction with customers was infused with the memory of those who had shaped him. The empire he built was more than money or recognition. It was a living testament to resilience, family bonds, and the relentless pursuit of meaning, even when life demanded sacrifices too heavy to measure. In this way, Rick Harrison's story is not only about a man and his business, it is about endurance, love, and the power of legacy that endures beyond personal loss.